Welcome to the Upshot, multi-world disc golf podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. He is Josh Mansfield. I am Charlie Eisenhood. I am a zombie right now, to be perfectly honest with you, everybody. Sorry the show's coming out late. I flew the red eye last night back from the USA Ultimate Frisbee National Championships, and so I'm a little bit zonked, but I have had a chance to catch up on all things disc golf, and I tuned in. Big Money Skins, I was locked in, Josh. I saw all of the shots from the live coverage. We'll get to that. But in reality, my focus the last few days has been on the Ultimate Frisbee World, and we had quite the national championships out in San Diego. And Josh, I know you got a chance to tune in. I'm so curious to hear your thoughts on what you watched.
Well, yeah, I sure wasn't watching the Big Money Skins, so I was free this weekend, unexpectedly. I did get to a chance to watch Nationals. So my favorite tweet every year is Andrew Fish when he puts name where you're from, a town that you love to root against, and what kind of team you like you enjoy watching. And so you gave me some suggestions, but I always go to the Andrew Fish tweet whenever there's a big Ultimate tournament.
Sure.
So I play along, and immediately I just had like 3-4 people start tweeting at me that I had to watch Truck Stop Ultimate. So I watched a couple of the women's games, but didn't follow any of the storylines particularly close. But I did manage to watch the Truck Stop Ultimate versus Johnny Bravo pool play game.
Let me just give some context super quick. Truck Stop,
please.
Number one team in the country. They came in as the number one seed. They were somewhat of a surprise number one seed because they weren't the favorites at the beginning of the season, but they've been a good team, a semifinals level team, quarter semis the last few years. They got some good young players out of college, moved to the DC area, and they have had the best offense in the country for the entire season. I mean, just unbelievable. A mix of veterans and 23-year-olds, and they've been fantastic against all defenses. So great, Josh. You tuned in.
Thanks. Yes, I tuned in. And was like very surprised, not surprised. It was very, I tweeted my reactions, and one of them included that I didn't feel like Truck Stop had to make any sensational plays because I felt, which to me is an indication of they were always in position and their throws were always precise, right? If you're diving out for a grab, it means that the throw was overthrown, or I mean, I don't know. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Behind every highlight in Ultimate is a bad throw.
Yes. Okay. That's what our saying was as a hockey goalie as well, right? Anytime there was a flashy save, it meant you were out of position. So that's the kind of the mentality I had. And there was no flashy play from Truck Stop in the pool play. It was clinical. And I also tweeted like I was really surprised because Truck Stop's defense had very few turnovers, but once they were up by 3, just like requiring Bravo to take, a full minute or 2 minutes to score a point was all the difference that they needed, even if they weren't getting the turnovers because the Truck Stop offense was unstoppable. So then we fast forward to the championships, and Truck Stop looked like Ricky at a majors. Like, it couldn't do anything. Maybe that joke's a little too fresh, but from my perspective, things that should have been routine and were routine in the pool play against the same team were not routine at all. And it didn't feel like, it looked like Bravo had made some defensive adjustments. The lanes that Truck Stop had thrown in the previous games felt like they were significantly more forced, and they didn't get the free kind of, 10 to 15 yard. I don't know if that's the right distance.
Yeah.
I'm okay. 10 to 15 yard passes, or even shorter, were not coming as easy as they were in the previous game. And then that was paired with just some spectacular bombs out of Bravo that put enormous pressure on the Truck Stop offense. And so, when it was after there was a turnover, so break points were just really spectacular from Bravo and felt like they really kind of just pushed Truck Stop into something they were completely uncomfortable with. And the tempo was very, very different in the championship as opposed to the pool play. So from somebody who does not watch Ultimate, this is my first time ever watching Ultimate, and sitting down and watching more than one match at a time, any given weekend. There are my thoughts.
I love it. Bravo is a surprise winner. I'm curious, how did you find the game itself? Like, not the specific teams or the matchup. I mean, I think your assessment of the two games is quite accurate as to what happened. I mean, it seems to me like Truck Stop really felt pressure in that final. I mean, they'd been perfect all season, and they played their worst game of the year in the national championship game. They really did. Their defense got 0 breaks, and their offense suddenly just started having drops and throwaways and weird turnovers, as you point out. But overall, what do you think of the gameplay of Ultimate as a sports fan? And I don't want you to sugarcoat it. Like, what do you notice? What do you find interesting? What do you find annoying? And then we'll move on to some disc golf.
Number one, I wish Ultimate had proprietary fields. I don't like football lines and trying to track. Yeah. And I'm probably about to give complaints that everybody in the Ultimate community complains about as well. I don't like the football lines. I found it hard to assess like where the end zone was, and like keeping track exactly where on the field they were relative to the Ultimate field was somewhat difficult. The second thing that I did not like is, I hate the way you guys call fouls. It's ridiculous. And it's a team sport, and you have referees that are called observers, but you don't use them as referees. It's weird. It's really weird. And I'm probably going to get some emails from Ultimate Disc Golf listeners. It's better than disc golf because at least there's like some other officiation.
At least there's enforcement of rules.
Right. Like the rules are taken somewhat seriously, but why not? Like, I don't get the point of going halfway. Why not? If you're going to just have the observer, just go all in and let them be a referee. So that was,
well, you just stepped into the hornet's nest, my friend.
I figured I had, I'm enough in Ultimate Twitter to know that I'm probably in trouble for this.
There's a lot of people who agree with you, for what it's worth.
Okay. Isn't it like antithetical to the spirit of Ultimate?
Yes. I mean, it's the same remember that disc golf and Ultimate are from the same foundation. The people who started playing disc golf were Ultimate players and vice versa. Like disc golf was created after Ultimate, and like everybody did all of the disc sports. So even as you're listening to this podcast, if you're like, I don't give a crap about this, I'm fast forwarding through this trash, I do not want to hear them talk about Ultimate. Remember that the genesis of these sports is very similar. And so the concept of like spirit of the game is also in the disc golf rule book and in the Ultimate rule book. Like this concept is the same. And the thing is, here's the difference between disc golf and Ultimate around this situation. In Ultimate, because it's a team sport where there is contact, obviously there are way more gray area rule situations that have to be adjudicated. Disc golf has these moments too. Is it in? Is it out? Do I take a provisional? Do I not take a provisional? But the good thing about disc golf is that these things are typically decided upon and moved forward within like 20 seconds. Mm-hmm. The card comes together. They say, no, it's not in. And once in a great while, they have to bring in Jeff Spring or somebody to make a ruling on something that's really, really difficult to assess. And that, fine. But mostly the game moves along, right? They keep playing. You don't just get to sit there and wait. No, you have to play. And Ultimate is just horribly bogged down by stoppages that last for 30 seconds, a minute, sometimes more, even with the observer system, which is kind of like a non-referee that can adjudicate and make a binding ruling if asked by the players. But this game is slowed down to the point of incredible levels of frustration for fans, I think. Yeah. And I think that you're noticing that. And to me, it's a major challenge that if Ultimate cares about being a spectator sport, which maybe it doesn't, has to get addressed. The professional leagues, Josh, offer a viewing experience with referees, well, the AUDL anyway, that removes a lot of that stuff. And some people think that that's a negative for the game because it removes the core essence of good spirit. But I think many others feel that the positive effects of keeping the game moving are a superior thing. And I think disc golf's going through this a little bit too. How do we assess the rules, and who makes the rules, who calls the infractions? Because right now it's nobody, right? Rather than have to deal with stress and these kinds of conflicts, There just are none because everybody's avoiding it by never calling anything. And that has its own problems. It means that people get unfair advantages, that people get away with stuff, that like it feels too buddy-buddy. And so that's, disc golf's dealing with this in a similar, but different way.
Yes. Yeah. Similar problem, but different kind of symptoms
Bingo.
of said problem.
Bingo.
Yeah. But overall, like, especially at the times when I felt like there was, and that you hit the nail on the head, that those stoppages really kill momentum as a viewer. When I felt like there was building momentum, it is really exciting, and I really enjoy watching it. The only other thing that doesn't make a ton of sense to me is how your time, like when the game ends and the score and how it ends, like universe point, I heard a couple times, and I don't really understand that premise fully, but like
Universe point just means next point wins.
Okay.
But the end of game clock score situation is incredibly confusing.
Yeah.
Even for people who know the sport. So it's a problem. Like you are hitting on exactly the things that keep the game from being accessible to general fans. I mean, you literally, and many of these issues are addressed by the professional leagues in some way to make them more clear. There's just a clock. There's not like a clock and then also this thing called a cap. And then also sometimes there's a hard cap and a soft cap. I'm not going to bother explaining any of this to you, but it's complicated and it makes it harder to follow what the score is supposed to be at the end of the game. Last question for you, Josh.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
You watched Bravo Truck. That was on Ultiworld Production YouTube.
Yes.
And then you watched Truck Bravo again in the finals. That was the ESPN production crew. They hire a big $1 million production truck. We're tying back into today's show here on the Upshot. What did you think of the two broadcasts? How they were similar or different, which you liked more? And again, be honest.
Sure. I think, and I'm trying to recall exactly, but if I remember right, ESPN has kind of like a better replay system. And maybe I'm, sorry, I was not, I didn't prep that part of it. I watched a lot about the frisbee.
100%.
I distinctly remember some highlight replay clips from the ESPN coverage that I thought were very visually appealing and exciting, and I enjoyed. I did prefer, I felt like the Ultiworld camera crew was better at catching the action, though. There's a critique oftentimes in hockey that the camera can be behind the puck sometimes because it can redirect, it moves very quickly. And so sometimes the camera, you'll catch moments when the camera falls behind. That's what I felt like came from the ESPN production, that there were moments where the movement was not what was expected and the camera fell behind that movement, or there was some off, like, I don't know what you call off. I would think of it like off ball action.
Yes.
Like for NBA, right?
The cutting
so whatever
space.
you'd call that. Sorry?
The cutting space, the cutters, downfield.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I felt like Ultiworld was better at giving me a visual of the cutting space when it mattered as opposed to the ESPN coverage. So I think those are the two things that I remember.
Josh, you've been watching Ultimate for 10 minutes and you named every single thing that everybody complains about in about 10 minutes. Incredible stuff. Incredible stuff. I'm going to pass this along to the people at the top of USA Ultimate and be like, listen to the people. Listen to the people. Okay, let's talk some disc golf. Thanks for watching.
Absolutely.
Ultimate season is over. Disc golf season is over, but actually not really, because the 2023 season starts in like 4 days. Can you believe it, Josh? Wraparound season, Lake Marshall Open, it's coming up. And points on the line. Silver Series points. Sorry, silver points. Silver points. Not a series anymore, just silver. We will talk more about that tournament on Thursday. But we will talk about the point structure for next year on today's show, and we'll get to that in just a bit. But first, we have to talk about big money skins. Big money. Now, I'm just gonna tell you right now, we are going to spoil the winner in about 5 to 10 seconds. So if you do not want to know, you need to go fast forward 30 seconds. We're gonna get through it really quick, so you can just hit plus 30 and you won't hear it. So in 3, 2, 1. Calvin Heimberg is your big money skins champion. I don't actually know exactly how much money he won, but presumably the $50,000. I doubt he won more than the 50,000, although I think it's theoretically possible. But 50 grand to Calvin Heimberg. Josh, if you're Calvin, would you rather have the 50 grand or the tour championship? 35 grand.
Tour champion. You know what? He just signed a 5-year deal. I would take the 50.
Take the money, baby.
Yeah. Just signed the deal. I thought you were going to say like a major, but yeah, no, I would take the money.
All right, we're not going to mention who won anymore. So welcome back. And the thing is, Josh, the competition, it'll be coming out on GK Pro post-produced YouTube channel per usual for skins. But the whole thing is, we talked about it last week. There was going to be live coverage for the first time. They hired this media company, 6-figure, contract to come in, produce this stream. They're telling us it's going to be the best stream that we've ever seen in disc golf. It's going to be incredible. All the cameras are wired in. They set up their own mesh network. $14.99 to sign up. And Josh, it was a total dumpster fire right from the jump.
Oh man. Yeah. Like day one, when people thought coverage was supposed to start, it didn't start. And then when it was like started, it kept jumping in and out of like where it would work, and then it wasn't available. And then there were times that it would just like, you just get images of a fountain for 3 minutes. And I screen recorded a clip and sent to you, Charlie, because I knew you weren't watching it. And that clip, I don't remember what day it was, but it was 2 minutes, and they show 4 throws. They don't show any catch cam at all. There's no graphics. I don't know what hole they're on. I don't know who's throwing. They throw. 2 of the guys are behind trees, so I can't even see them throw because there's a tree in the way. Half the cameras are shaking, you
no tripod.
Can't hold it still. Yeah. It was, I guess Terry Miller was like putting in the YouTube comments like what was happening in terms of the standings. So, Terry Miller, the hero none of us deserve, but we all need.
And Jeremy Colling too, who's like in the booth with some dude who has no idea what disc golf's all about. No clue. And he's like doing this broadcast and just like trying to duct tape this whole thing together.
I guess that guy is like a pretty big Saint. I saw some people posting.
Yeah.
Pretty big St. Louis commentator for St. Louis sports.
I bet if he had a couple months to prepare and like learn about disc golf, he'd be a great play-by-play commentator, to be honest.
I think so too. Yeah. But it was a train wreck.
It was a total disaster.
I cannot think how it could have been worse. GK has issued refunds or is issuing refunds. They've announced that they'll issue refunds to everybody who purchased the $15 package. It was available for free all weekend. I don't know when they decided that or if there was just an error, because I could go onto the website and see it for free when I went to go to the pay-per-view side. So that was kind of weird.
Here's the thing. You want to know something? It would have been better if they just never broadcasted anything at all.
Uh-huh.
If they had just been like, we couldn't make the stream work, we're refunding, people would have been like, oh, dang, bummer. Like, they couldn't figure it out. That sucks. But because of the way it went down, with how brutally bad it was, and how much like overpromise and underdeliver happened here, just awful. We got an email. Big blunder skins was the subject line, and Real says, Josh, an option you gave was this production could be the worst thing anyone has ever seen when it comes to disc golf, and it was till it got a hell of a lot worse than that. That's a tough review. Look, I told you last week, folks, doing live coverage is really hard. It's not just about getting your cameras into the truck, and clearly there was a total failure to have the requisite pieces in place to put on a successful broadcast, because not only were they having issues straight up just simply bringing camera shots to the world, but the audio was a mess. There basically were no graphics whatsoever. There was no through line. of like what the production plan was going to be. And I think you must recognize when you see this, how hard it is and how lucky we are overall to have the level of coverage that Disc Golf Network provides. I was saying this to somebody earlier, I think while I was out USDGC. Normally I go walk the cards. I'll go walk with a lead card. But this year I've spent more time watching on DGN when I wasn't commentating because it's simply a better way to know what is happening at the tournament. Because if somebody's going off on the third card, but there's also people playing well on the lead card, it's not possible to watch both of those things.
Nope.
Especially at a course like Winthrop where like you can have some pretty significant walks between holes. And so DGN just makes it possible to like consume all of that. Now, yes, DGN has many problems that I hope that they fix, like image quality. Like I hope they can improve that over time. The audio delay on the commentary just drives me insane. It drives me insane. But like, it's not that big of a problem that you can't do the basic fundamental thing of watching the shots get thrown and know what's happening.
Yep.
And so this big money skins thing just shows you that it does not matter how many cameras, how much fancy equipment you have. There's so much more to it than that. And I mean, it's very obvious that this company that they hired, I believe they're mostly a post-production outfit, and it shows because they did not know how to produce a live stream. Just seriously, like not even, it's not like they came close. They did not come close.
It was so bad. And I saw so many people on socials who were saying, I have great respect for DGN now. Yeah. Thank you, DGN. The work you do on your budget is incredible. I'm a DGN subscriber now. Like all these emails just praising DGN for all of the things that they have done and accomplished. And look, DGN has to be thrilled. This is great advertising for them. This is great marketing for them because people realize how difficult it is to do live coverage. And as more and more people want live disc golf, DGN is going to be seen as a valuable package where people feel like they get their money's worth. And that's an important part for people who are going to subscribe. If people don't feel like they're getting their money's worth, I don't care how good the production quality is, people will not pay for it. It's that sense of value. I'm spending $5 a month, $6 a month. I don't even remember how much it is. I have it on auto renewal for mine, but whatever your PDGA membership is, if it's just on that auto renewal system and people are asking themselves, am I getting $6 worth of entertainment out of this? At this point, I'm shocked at how good DGN does. Because I am not in production, right, Charlie? You are, and you were saying this. You were giving the warnings. I am not, and I believed you. I've talked to you enough, and we talk about it on the show. But just now putting that in perspective of how much I pay every month for the coverage that we get for Disc Golf Network, it's one of the best bargain values in sports.
Yeah, I mean, it costs a lot less than League Pass or Major League Baseball at bat or an ESPN subscription. I mean, geez, getting ESPN costs
NFL Red Zone,
it's like $35 a month, kind of on the low end,
for
right?
Basic, yeah, exactly. 60 for like a lot of the packages.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have. I'm a cord cutter, so I don't have it. So I do have it because my wife's dad has some crazy cable package. So thank you.
Nice.
So yeah, look, I mean, people are going to be looking for villains here, and I don't really think there's villains. I think this is a situation, and who knows what the contract stuff's going to be on the back end. The production company, are they going to try to collect their money? I mean, I would think not, or at least a fraction of what they were going to get. But the thing is, they were never trying to make money from this media package. I do think we set the line at under 1,500 people bought the live stream. I think it was probably over, Josh. Like, we don't have the numbers, right, but there were a lot of people like tuning in. Now, partly maybe people wanted to just tune in and watch cars crash into each other, like there's like a little rubbernecking action going on there. But I do think that there was like a little more interest in this than I anticipated.
I would agree with that. It's hard because, like I said, I was able to access it for free.
Well, so was everybody else.
When I went to go to right. So yeah, it's hard to know, but I am interested if we could get those numbers. But there was a lot more interest than I expected.
I know there was discussion about having this on DGN. I don't know how far along those talks got or if they were ever really very serious from DGN side, but they got to be like, we dodged that punch.
Here's the other thing, though, that somebody else brought up. A huge skins tournament like this is the worst kind of disc golf to possibly try and live broadcast. Like 96 people, all of whom are relevant because of the way they get scored. There wasn't really a lead card. Like it's a hard format to begin with to keep track of what's going on, the storylines, let alone just getting the golf and getting an adequate amount of golf. So, I don't know if that's why, but
I think you pretty much can only watch the final day and know what's going on.
Right. I know that GK skins are a really popular package. I had a buddy of mine from Montana, Jason. He messaged me after the show and told me, he said, he watches every GK skins match. And, he said that apparently they've been advertising it on that skins videos, every video for the year. And so my bad for not knowing about the advertising, because I just personally don't watch them. But he said that the biggest thing about skins for him is that interaction between players.
Sure.
And that's why he was not going to purchase that package. It just felt so antithetical to what the GK Pro skins have been from the get-go. And the way and the way everything felt like it was kind of put together from the get-go, we were skeptical. And unfortunately, it seems like that skepticism was well placed.
I respect the ambition. I think they got people excited about the idea of this big cash prize. But this is now twice we've seen post-pro companies try to do a live thing and not do a very good job. And it goes to show you that when you compare Jomez to DGN, you're not comparing apples to oranges. And I think you can see that here. So good on GK for coming out right away and being like, yo, we totally botched this and we're going to give everybody's money back. That's obviously the number one thing to do in a situation like this, because how could you not do that? I think there's the Eagles Crossing folks are bankrolling a lot of this anyway. So I don't think this is going to financially bankrupt GK Pro. And I'm sure people are still going to be excited to tune in and watch the round when it comes out. So there you go. 2023 point system is now announced by the Disc Golf Pro Tour.
Glad it got out before the 2023 season starts this weekend.
It's kind of crazy that we're already going to have events that count towards next year. But we do. October 28th, the Lake Marshall Open starts in Virginia. A lot of hype about this course. We'll talk about it Thursday. Some people are like, Virginia area folks are like, we got to have a major here. Like, we got to make it happen. There was supposed to be live coverage, but it's not going to happen now. I guess there's not enough cell coverage out there, and so DGN will not be covering it live. It'll only be post-produced and posted to the DGPT YouTube channel. Now, let's talk about the point system. I'm going to just keep it really simple, Josh. Here's how it works. Silver Series are worth 50% instead of 100%, instead of 25% of a typical Elite Series. Elite, your baseline 100%, 100 points for a win.
Yep.
And then majors, playoffs, and Elite Plus events are all worth 150%. So a win at Portland Open is the same as a win at Worlds in terms of points in the Pro Tour standings. 2 out of the 3 majors will count towards your total. The U.S. Women's and U.S. DGC will not count towards the Pro Tour Championship because they happened right before the Pro Tour Championship. So they're doing the same thing they did this year, which is just not including those in their count for the tournament. What are your thoughts? They've increased the value of silver, although you still only get to carry 3 events. So 150 total points maximum for your silver events. And then they've upped the value of the playoffs, basically, and these new Elite Plus. And we've kind of talked about that now, even now, more odd distinction between those two things. But what do you think about the point system overall?
I don't like moving Silver Series more in value. I think that it's antithetical to the goal of what the Silver Series has kind of been slated to be.
I don't think that's the goal. That's not
the goal anymore.
What's being communicated here, right?
That's true. So that's a fair point. If the problem that I have, I'm fine with the Silver Series being worth 50 points. If people want to play the Silver Series, great. I guess the complaints that I would have then, number one, how do people get tour cards? Like, I think that question is more pressing than ever now. If Silver Series are not a mechanism to doing so, if the top players are going to be playing at the Silver Series events, because you're going to be rewarding people who take 51st and saying, congratulations, here's your tour card. You managed to finish 51st because every pro under the sun went and played at that Silver Series event. So I think you're right. This reorients the goal about what Silver Series are intended to be, and I want to know what how people are going to get tour cards. That's the big question I have left. Otherwise, I feel fine about the Silver Series. I hate the new point system for Elite Plus playoffs and majors. What's the difference between a playoff and an Elite Plus event now? Why are they not just why do they have different designations? Is there any practical delineation between a playoff and an Elite Plus event? And I think majors should be worth more.
I think I'm mostly fine with this. I mean, I agree that it muddies the waters with this Elite Plus and playoff thing. I mean, the only distinction that I can really see is that the playoffs come at the end of the season. But for all intents and purposes, they seem to be the same thing. Like, these are bigger, more important tournaments. I think simplifying that in the future would make sense.
Yeah.
Forcing the playoff thing, it didn't work this year. It's not going to work next year.
It's going to be worse next year.
It's just not going to work. It's not going to feel like the playoffs. It's just a bigger tournament that's worth more points towards the end of the season. And so that part I don't love. I mean, I guess I get it from trying to generate postseason excitement, but it fell flat this year, and I don't see any way that it's going to improve, barring significant changes to cutoffs for those events. I mean, that's the difference, right?
Sure.
That's the difference. The difference is right. There's a cut for those events, or there's a minimum standard by which you have to meet to get into those tournaments. If that's a lower bar, right, or I guess I should say a higher bar, it's harder to get in, then those are going to feel more relevant as quote unquote playoffs.
Agreed.
Now, I agree with you. Major should be worth more. Major should be worth more. Don't pretend that Portland Open is equal to European Open. I'm sorry. I don't agree with that. I just don't agree with that. I think the majors should be held to their own standard and level. And frankly, I'd love to see them go to 200% for those. In my mind, they're worth more. They're probably worth more than twice an Elite Series event in my assessment of a player's, the importance to the season. I get it. The Pro Tour is emphasizing their own product above things that are not really owned by them, but I still think it's just a little off in terms of how it sort of values things relatively. I thought they did a better job with this in 2021 or 2022.
I agree with that. And that's the problem, is that there were a couple of things about 2022 that felt a little bit off, that just didn't, when you looked at it and just kind of gave it a holistic look, you're like, that doesn't really make sense or add up, in my opinion. And the problem is they didn't rectify those things. They exacerbated them. The delineation of bringing majors closer and pushing Elite Plus up and combining those with the playoffs that nobody really made sense of anyway as to why they're playoffs, just I really think is the incorrect decision if you're trying to establish the weight. Because now, hypothetically, if a player were to win Portland Open, Ledgestone, and D-Glow, and also win Champions Cup, European Open, and Worlds,
they get the same number of points.
They got the same number of points. In fact, the person who won the Elite Plus events has more points because the person who won the majors doesn't get to carry all three of them.
That's right.
So if Paul wins all three majors next year and Ricky wins 3 Elite Plus, by their standard, Ricky should be tour champion, not Paul. And it goes back to them emphasizing their own product. But I'm sorry, nobody's going to take that award seriously if you give the award to somebody who so clearly got beat in the overall view of the season. Yeah. That's not the case this year, but next year it very well could be because of this point system.
I am going to push back. I mean, you said you don't like the silver change. I actually like the silver change. I think it aligns more with how those events are being treated by players. 25% is like so minimal as to kind of be like, you only go if you're like a borderline player or you just fits in to your schedule in a nice way. This is going to make it more clearly like the silver events really aren't for developing the next generation of professional disc golfers.
Sure.
Like that, I think originally that was the conception, but it's just not working out that way. And really what it is it's a lesser testing ground for Pro Tour events. Okay. And 50% feels like it's a little bit more aligned with kind of like the correct value for what those should be. Because you still only get to carry 3. So it's like, there's not a huge incentive to play them, but it's enough points to be worth going to.
I guess the one pushback I would have is like, I really appreciated that we got to see Stacey Haas and Albert Tom win at the Open at Tallahassee.
I think we're still going to get that stuff.
You think so?
I do.
Okay. All right. If that's my biggest fear is that we lose that for those kind of borderline players to get wins where otherwise, I mean, weren't even close for most of the season.
I mean, if you're a top player, so the maximum number of points you can get is 1,650.
Okay.
And only 150 of those points are available at Silver Series.
That's true.
And like once you've won 3, you have literally no incentive to go. Or even if you're a great player, if you're a top 10 player and you go and you finish 3rd, 5th, 2nd, like, are you really going to go out of your way to try to go pick up an extra like 25, 30 points? Probably not. You know?
Yeah.
I think this is still going to emphasize that next tier of player who are grinding a little bit harder, who want to go and make the money on the off weeks, who want to have a chance to get that spotlight and be on the live coverage, perhaps on the lead card. So I don't really think it's going to substantively change it, but I think it is going to provide those players a little bit more value for playing well against what is typically a pretty good field at these events.
Okay. I think that's a fair point. I would say, you mentioned the total amount of points that are available for a player to earn at 1,650. I had never thought about the points as being like a cap. Like there's like a, with that cap, I would be really interested for a stat. Shout out Statmando, to see like a regular updated efficiency of like how many points do a player have, how many do they have possible, and what is their new possible max, right? So if Paul's already carrying 300 points from the majors, his possible max may be decreased as a result because he doesn't get to drop one of them. So I would be really interested to see kind of where players are at and where they're at relative to their possible maximums. I think it'd be a really interesting way to track season performance.
They are counting 3 silvers, 8 elite, 2 majors, and 2 playoffs. So the other big thing is that you have to carry both your playoff events. That's the other big change with the majors relative to the elite, elite plus, which are combined into one bucket.
So our elite, I get 8 elite events.
Yep.
Are elite plus included in that bucket of 8 elite?
Correct.
Weird.
So that's the distinction compared to playoff events. The Elite Plus are still elite events. They're just worth more. And the playoffs you have to carry separately.
Yeah. I wish that there were just 3 or 4 Elite Plus events that you're required to carry and were worth more. Just call them
That's
Elite
fair.
Plus. 4 of them. You
That's
have to carry all 4.
Quote from Jeff Spring in the press release. As the tour continues to expand, our point system will evolve based on the goal of ensuring that players are able to choose which events to attend while not being penalized for prioritizing their rest and health. The 2023 season offers plenty of opportunities to earn points towards our crowning event, the DGPT Championship, while still giving players opportunities to select an event schedule that maximizes their performance. We're thankful to the tour card holders and the newly formed DGPT Players Council for their feedback as we develop the point scale for next season and beyond. So I do appreciate that. They are keeping enough wiggle room in the schedule for players not to have to do everything and like grind. Now, a lot of players still seem to choose that, but that's not required. So there's 13 Elite and Elite Plus events, and you only carry 8. There's 7 silvers. Eventually, they haven't named all of those yet, but that's their plan. There's going to be 7. You carry 3, and then there's 3 majors prior to the cutoff, and you carry 2. So lots of room, right? If you don't go to Europe, you don't do the West Coast swing, like you're not going to be overly penalized for that. And I think that's good because they are at least being cognizant of the potential, sort of overuse injury risk that there, I think, is coming into play in disc golf.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's a question of creating your, like the big pillars that define your season, i.e. the majors, and then moving down in those levels, right? Here's what I have to attend as many majors as possible. I then have to attend as many Elite Plus events as possible. And then I attend as many Elite Series as I desire, preferably up to so many, and then so many Silver Series. So it's good. I appreciate the thought around that and the ability for that flexibility as well. I think that they missed the mark for me personally in a couple of ways, but you live and you learn.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Josh and I are talking about our ballots for Disc Golf Pro Tour Player of the Year and the other end of season awards. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. The Upshot is presented by Pound Disc Golf, makers of the best bags in the sport. Did you know the Pound makes more than disc golf backpacks? That's right. They've got beverage carriers. I've got one. They're awesome. They've got travel bags like the Fly Pack. You can even get a toolbox to have a practice bag in the trunk of your car, a fanny pack, packing cubes, and a whole lot more. Go to PoundDiscGolf.com and trick yourself out with Pound bags for every aspect of your bag needs. Welcome back to the Upshot. So Josh and I both had media votes in the Disc Golf Pro Tour Player of the Year and other end of season awards competition. So we got our votes placed this past week, and we're going to share our full ballot with you here on the show so that you know who we voted for, what our thought process was. Josh and I did not discuss this at all. I mean, obviously we talk about these kinds of things on the show, but we didn't discuss our ballots at all before this moment. So we're going to be talking about it kind of the first time right now, and it should be fun. We'll see where we agreed, where we differed. Why don't we start with Player of the Year? It's the one we talk about the most, of course, Josh. I think we both know we should start with number 1 because I think we both know where we're going with that in both divisions. I went with Ricky Wysocki and Kristen Tatar. I'm assuming you did the same.
I did do the same.
I don't know that there's much more that needs to be said because we've already discussed it ad nauseum.
Yes.
Just, Ricky winning, Kristen winning Tour Championship locked it up for me after those players were both, clearly coming in as the favorites into that final tournament of the year.
Yeah. No more for me to add. Over in second place, so we did is we were given first through fifth choices, and there are points assigned to each of those choices. For our second choice, I put Paige Pierce and Paul Macbeth.
So did I. I don't really know that there's much of a question. I mean, I think you could find a way to argue for a different player in MPO, but probably not in FPO.
Yeah.
As much as Paige had a sloppy end of the season and did not play very well, she still just won way too many tournaments for you to give it to anybody else.
Yep. And too many majors.
Right.
So, yep, I agree with that.
In third place, Josh, I went with Katrina Allen, and over in MPO, which is I think maybe we could see some differences there, I went with Gannon Burr in third.
So I also picked Katrina Allen for my third place. I went with Simon Lizotte, though, in my third place. I think I completely understand the Gannon pick. I think the major is combined with the consistency absolutely merits, and is completely fair to merit a podium. I was just really impressed with Simon's 4 wins this year, and if Ricky hadn't done 5, I think that would have been, I mean, the talk is Simon's 4 wins and just how incredible that has been and how difficult it is to win on tour now. So,
yeah. For me, I'll just tell you now, Simon ended up in 5th place behind Gannon and Calvin. I think
interesting.
Obviously Simon had more wins than both of them. I'm not trying to deny that. They really, those 5 guys were the obvious top 5. And it's about the order of those last 3. Gannon for me went 3 because the ability to play as consistently as he did is very difficult. To have like the lowest average finish on tour is extremely impressive. Mm-hmm. And it was the USDGC win that capped it off for me. Like, that's such a big tournament to win. And I just feel like overall, his season was better than Simon's. Like, if you really zoom out and you think about the overall season that he had, yes, Simon won more tournaments, but Gannon won a major. That's worth at least, 2? He also won a Silver Series. That's not worth as much as an Elite Series in my mind, but like, he still got some wins. He came very close to some wins in playoff coin flip situations where Simon was winning. And like, good for Simon for winning the coin flips, but like, to some extent, it's a coin flip. And
sure,
you have Paul McBeth has a losing record in playoffs in his career. It's because it's a coin flip a lot of the time. So to me, the week in and week out constant relevance of Gannon outweighed Simon's number of wins, because Simon had a lot of weeks where he was just completely out of contention. And he also missed a chunk of the season. So I feel the same way about your pick with Simon at 3. I have no issue with it. I think it's reasonable. I think we're splitting hairs in these last couple spots, but I just feel like Gannon overall, when I think about who had the better season, I just think the answer is Gannon. Now, if he hadn't won USDGC, it wouldn't even be a question for me. But that's such a big tournament that it was enough for me to put him ahead.
I completely respect that. And that's why I've got Gannon in my 4th pick. I mean, it was really close for me on the Simon Gannon pick. And even after I submitted my ballot, I went back and was like, man, maybe I should have put Gannon higher with the USDGC win. The one that surprises me, though, is Calvin ahead of Simon. That's the one that I have a harder time wrapping my head around. So why do you make that pick?
Well, I mean, again, for me, it's about the consistency aspect. Like, there were a couple tournaments where Calvin was kind of out of the mix, but if you actually look at the stats, he was around the top all the time. And he won 3 tournaments, right?
2.
It was just 2?
Yeah, I think it was only 2.
I feel like I could certainly be convinced that I got that one wrong. I just think that I feel like Simon was such a feel-good story, but like didn't actually have like enough week in and week out strong play for me to feel like he had a great season.
Sure. I understand that. And, he comes back, he took, and the other problem is he didn't come back till Champions Cup because he was taking a little extra time due to his injury.
But 4 wins is 4 wins. And like, there was never a doubt in my mind that he was going to be in my top 5.
Yeah. That's the one I probably would like, if I went back and thought about it, like I could see myself switching the Gannon Simon possibly, but I could not. I think in my opinion, Calvin is 5th. The week in, week out, you got to be the best in order for that to really count in my book. And which is why Gannon, I think, gets some credit for that. But Calvin was like fairly consistent and had a couple of wins, but I'm going to prioritize either the mega consistent with a major or the guy who just won a whole lot on tour this year. So that's why I put him ahead of my Calvin. Calvin's in my 5th, if that's not obvious.
The other thing, and one of the big reasons that I think I ended up with Calvin, Josh, is that at the majors and at the Tour Championship, Calvin was just a lot better than Simon. Like a lot better. Calvin went 5 for 5 on top 10s. He had 2 podium finishes. He averaged 1046 rating. Simon went 0 for 5 on top 10s, averaged 1023, and just was not relevant at the biggest tournaments of the year. So to me, Calvin playing better at the majors while also having a couple of Elite Series wins just outweighed slightly along, in the consistency, outweighed Simon's 4 wins. So there you go.
I don't agree, but that's all right. We didn't have to collaborate on our ballots, so That's
okay.
all right.
So give it your FPO 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, so I think 3, we both said Katrina Allen.
We did.
If I hadn't said that. So we agree on our podium for FPO. In my 4, I have Valerie Mondahano. And then in my 5, I have Missy Gannon.
Okay, interesting. So Missy Gannon did not make my top 5.
Okay.
I have
who did
Owen
instead.
Scoggins in the 4 spot. And I think maybe you're seeing like a pattern to my voting a little bit. Owen didn't win any tournaments, but the constant podium finishes and relevance from start to finish this season, to me, was enough to outweigh some of the players who popped off for a win or two, but otherwise, weren't as consistently up at the top of the leaderboard. And that's why I have her ahead of Mondahano, who, kind of fell off a little bit after that hot stretch she had at the beginning of the season. And Missy Gannon, who was not super strong at the beginning of the year, but played well at the end of the year. Owen was there week in, week out, all the time. So
and
that's why
true.
That's why I went with Owen.
Here's the one point I'll make about that consistency. Owen's consistency, in my opinion, is very different than the consistency of like Gannon or Calvin or others that we've talked about. Because there were weeks that, yes, Owen podiumed, but she was also 5, 6, 7 strokes off the lead. And nowhere in contention. So yes, she was on lead card. Yes, we saw her, but her consistency was not nearly as in contention as some of the other consistent players that we've talked about. And that's why I prioritize the wins and some other people who were in the mix at other tournaments at times when Owen was not. And so even if they weren't as consistent, I had that chance to take it. And so that's why
the only 2 players that podiumed more than Owen this year were Kristen and Paige. That's it.
It's an impressive feat. That one I understand. Like, I think of all our picks here, the only one I still would probably say I would disagree with is the Calvin decision. Sure. Other than that, I think all of them are make sense and are splitting hairs.
Okay, let's talk about our most improved player picks. We matched in MPO. We both said Gannon Burr, and how could you not? How could you not? It's a lot.
He could
win
it again next year.
That would be pretty shocking to go from being 1040 rated and winning USDGC to winning most improved again in 2023. I don't know, but I don't really know that there's another player that comes to my mind for this award. Maybe Aaron Gossage was somebody who I was considering. Could you say Corey Ellis? Wouldn't be crazy.
Thought about him.
But Gannon
Aaron
went from
Gossage
being
was
like
my other pick.
Oh, he's an exciting young player to being like, oh, this dude is like the real deal.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there was really much question in my mind.
I think we did differ in FPO, though. I, for FPO Most Improved, chose Holland Hanley.
Love the pick. Do you want to guess who I chose? There's a couple options. I think there's a couple. It's not Valerie Mondahano, although I think she's an option.
I think she's an option too. The other one I kind of debated a lot with was Maria Oliva.
Reasonable. I went with Kat Murch.
Great pick. I think it's a good pick.
Holland Hanley's a great pick too. And a lot of it comes down to, where do you see, what kind of improvement are you looking to see? What makes you impressed with them or not? I mean, I think there's other players that you could look to as well. Natalie Ryan, for instance, is somebody who's gone way up the leaderboard. Emily Beach was not even somebody we were talking about last year. Whereas Kat Murch and Holland Hanley were players that we were talking about. But to me, when I think of most improved, it's not just about somebody who emerged. It's also about somebody who went from a level of play to a very clearly higher level of play while kind of in the tour world. And I think that both Holland and Kat Murch fit the bill there. I really don't have a quibble with either of those.
I don't either. I feel the same way. So the next category then was for all-star cards for second and third card. Remember, top card is determined by point standings and goes to the top 4 players. Over an FPO, that is Kristen, Paige, Katrina, and Own. And an MPO, that was Ricky, Paul, Calvin, and Gannon. They were not options to be selected. They are already first card all-stars. So then we got to pick 8 players in order to get second and third card all-stars. So I'll go first. Over on the FPO side, I picked Valerie Mondahano, Missy Gannon, Ella Hansen, Sarah Hokum, Evelina Salonen, Maria Oliva, Holland Handley, and Henna Blomroos. No particular order.
Great. So I matched you on Valerie, Evelina, Holland, Henna, Ella, and Missy. Okay. So I did not have Maria Oliva and I did not have Sarah Hokum. Now I want to talk about my voting process here a little bit. Part of it is just like, did you have a monster season? You're probably getting in if you had a monster season. So like Valerie Mondahano is getting in because she had a monster season. But I also considered the all-star part of this. I also want to think about players who I want to see play in an all-star event. So that was a decision factor. I wasn't just looking to pick the top X players based on their season or their, capabilities. It went a little deeper than that. So the players that I had that you didn't were Haley King and Kat Murch. Haley King didn't finish up high on the, Disc Golf Pro Tour leaderboard because she skipped a bazillion events.
Yeah.
And the thing is, how you going to have an all-star event without Haley King? Like, to me, she won a major. She's a baller. Like,
yeah,
I want to see Haley King play at an all-star event. So, there are players who had arguably a better season than her, but she was a lock for me. Now, I don't think it's crazy to have Sarah and Maria, but like, I don't know. Like, for me at this point, Sarah Hokum, I don't know if she's really got it anymore.
And like, that may be true, but I guess that's kind of my philosophy when I was looking at the all-star side. I was thinking, I mean, you'll get NBA players who are having their worst season in decades because they're just on their way out, and they still get selected the all-star on name recognition.
Right.
I think of Sarah Hokum in that way, right? Like the
totally
veteran who also is a forehand specialist, right? Like that's the part I wanted to see because there's the skills contest, and I hope she gets to use that more in the next skills contest. But I think of Sarah Hokum in that way, about the veteran who gets the invite on her name recognition alone, even if her better days are behind her.
Over in MPO, I have Chris Dickerson, Simon Lizotte, Joel Freeman, Matty O, James Conrad, Isaac Robinson, Kyle Klein, and this last one was tough, but I went with Corey Ellis.
Okay. So for my MPO, I matched you with Chris Dickerson, Simon Lizotte, Matty O, Kyle Klein, Joel Freeman, and Isaac Robinson. I differ. First in Aaron Gossage. I put him in, I guess we'll say, instead of James Conrad. And then the other one I put in was Drew Gibson.
Mm-hmm. I will say Conrad and Ellis were my last two in. So I think
we had and Aaron and Drew were my last
on
two.
The top 6.
Yeah. So I think Aaron really earned it with his performance at Worlds, and he was one who I think I considered for most improved, and so I think deserved kind of some of that recognition. I think the more controversial of my picks is probably the Drew Gibson pick. Drew, in my opinion, he's got the win at Las Vegas, which I think is an important deal. That if you're going to win on tour like Drew Gibson, I think that is an important thing given how few people are able to win on tour. The second thing, though, that kind of goes into it in my mind is when I think about Drew is a player with some of the greatest talent at disc golf among other players. We talk about him in the same way. He's
someone you want to see at an all-star event.
Yeah, exactly. He's someone I want to see in an all-star event. I mean, he may not be the best golfer, but man, can he throw a disc. And I want to see that buzz at the all-star event. Gosh darn it.
Yeah, I don't have qualms with that. He started the season off great. He got the win at LVC, and then he was kind of a non-factor for the rest of the year. And that held it back for me. Like, and I thought about him for sure because I agree. Like, I would like to watch him throw 600 feet. I enjoy that immensely. But, you know, a guy like Corey Ellis played way better than Drew overall. Now, if you want to knock him because he didn't win in his spots when he had his shots, you know, he didn't win an MVP. And Drew clutched up crazy to win LVC. But, like, overall, Corey played better than Drew this year. And is Corey Ellis as interesting a player to watch at an All-Star event? No, I don't think so. But, you know, this is the thing. It's like a kind of a challenging choice because then the same thing with James Conrad. I'm like, James Conrad is a fan favorite. James Conrad should be at an all-star event.
Right.
He has the greatest shot in the history of disc golf. Like, so, you know, I don't know how perfectly consistent my voting was on these like marginal cases where I was picking the last one or two people, but that was the thought there. You know, it's not like James Conrad had an amazing season or anything. He was fine, but I think he was probably down overall compared to 2021, you know, even if you remove the World's win. So, yeah, I think, you know.
It's really funny because I think our philosophies flipped for MPO, FPO. I put Sarah Hokum in on the name recognition and you put James Conrad in. And then I put Drew Gibson in because I want to watch him and you put Haley King in, even though neither had spectacular seasons.
Well, we want to know what you think. What would your ballot be? Where were we right? Where were we wrong? Upshot at ultiworld.com is the best way to get in touch. Thank you so much for being with us. We will be back with you Thursday to get you ready for the Lake Marshall Open. And we're starting to get ready for some little off-season content. Ooh, yeah. We're starting to talk about our holiday roundtables already. So if you have ideas for things that we could discuss in our roundtables during the late December, let us know now because we're starting to plan those out. And lots more to come as we get into the off-season and the start of the 2023 season this coming weekend. For Josh Mansfield, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long. We'll talk to you on Thursday right here on The Upshot.